Napoleon and the French Revolution unleashed a series of powerful ideas, often called isms, that profoundly shaped the political, cultural, and social landscape of the 19th century. Among the most influential were liberalism, which emphasized individual rights, constitutional government, and political freedom. Romanticism, which celebrated emotion, imagination, and the importance of nature and national culture. Conservatism, which sought to preserve traditional institutions and social order in the face of revolutionary change. And nationalism, which promoted loyalty and devotion to one's nation, often inspiring movements for national unity and independence across Europe. Together, these ideologies influenced governments, inspired reform movements, and transformed societies throughout the century. In this video, we'll begin with Romanticism and Conservatism, two major reactions to the Enlightenment and the upheavals of the Revolutionary era. One of the most important 19th century movements was Romanticism, which arose in part as a German reaction against Napoleon and against French cultural dominance. French culture in the 18th century had been deeply shaped by the Enlightenment, an intellectual movement that emphasized reason, order, logic, scientific thinking, and the belief that the universe operated like a perfectly structured machine governed by natural laws. In the 19th century, however, many German thinkers reacted against this rational and orderly worldview. Rather than focusing solely on reason, they emphasized emotion, imagination, intuition, individuality, and the spiritual connection between people and nature. This shift helped inspire the Romantic movement, which celebrated human feelings, creativity, and the mysteries of life that could not always be explained through science and logic alone. The Romantics reacted strongly against the ideals of the Enlightenment. Rather than emphasizing reason and logic, they placed greater value on emotion, imagination, and personal experience. They rejected the Enlightenment's focus on order, rules, and the idea of the universe as a machine governed solely by rational laws. Instead, Romantics viewed the world as mysterious, spiritual, and even magical. They celebrated the uniqueness of each individual and believed that human feelings and creativity were essential to understanding life. Many Romantic thinkers also criticized what they saw as the Enlightenment's cold rationalism and its tendency to downplay religion. As a result, they looked back admiringly on the Middle Ages, viewing it as an era of deep Christian faith, cultural richness, and strong community values. The Middle Ages became a major source of inspiration for Romantic thinkers and artists. Fascinated by what they saw as an era of faith, heroism, and cultural richness, Romantics turned to medieval themes in many aspects of life. Authors wrote novels and poems set in the medieval world, while historians studied medieval society in an effort to understand how the modern age had lost many of its traditional values. Painters filled their canvases with images of knights, castles, cathedrals, and legendary figures, and musicians embraced themes of mystery, heroism, adventure, and deep emotion. The influence of medievalism even extended to fashion, as men grew their hair longer and wore beards, while women adopted long, flowing gowns and straight hairstyles inspired by medieval styles. Through these interests, Romantics expressed their admiration for a past they believed was more spiritual, authentic, and emotionally fulfilling than the modern industrial world. Romantic painters were especially drawn to the power and beauty of nature, often portraying dramatic mountains, stormy seas, dense forests, and ancient ruins. These landscapes reflected the Romantic belief that nature was awe-inspiring, mysterious, and far greater than human beings. Many Romantics believed that modern society and industrialization were destroying the natural world, so they celebrated nature in its wild and untamed state. Overall, Romanticism was a sweeping reaction against the Enlightenment's emphasis on reason, order, and rationality. Instead, it championed emotion, imagination, spirituality, individuality, and a deep appreciation for both nature and the past. Another major reaction to the Enlightenment and to the violence and upheaval of the French Revolution was conservatism. While Enlightenment thinkers had promoted reason, reform, and challenges to traditional authority, conservatives argued that rapid change often led to instability and chaos. The foundations of modern conservatism were laid by the English statesman Edmund Burke, who criticized the French Revolution and warned of the dangers of attempting to completely remake society based on abstract theories. Burke believed that traditions, institutions, and social customs that had developed over generations contained valuable wisdom and should not be discarded lightly. Conservatives therefore emphasized respect for established authority, religion, monarchy, and social order, arguing that gradual change was preferable to radical revolution. Their ideas became highly influential in Europe as leaders sought to restore stability after the turmoil of the Revolutionary and Napoleonic eras. At first, Edmund Burke supported the early stages of the French Revolution because he believed that reasonable reforms could strengthen society and correct abuses. However, as the revolution became increasingly radical and violent, he turned sharply against it. In 1790, Burke published Reflections on the Revolution in France, a powerful critique of the revolution that became one of the foundational works of modern conservatism. He argued that a nation's institutions, traditions, and customs develop gradually over centuries and should not be discarded hastily. According to Burke, attempting to tear down a society's established traditions in one stroke would destroy the social fabric that held the nation together. He also contended that rights and duties do not arise from abstract theories or social contracts alone, but from history, custom, and the bonds of family, community, and inherited institutions. For Burke, preserving these traditions was essential to maintaining stability, order, and civilization. Conservatives believed that change was sometimes necessary, but it should occur gradually rather than through violent revolution. They argued that society depended on key institutions such as the monarchy, the church, private property, and the family, which provided stability, continuity, and moral guidance. Rather than overthrowing established institutions, conservatives sought to preserve and strengthen them, believing that they embodied the accumulated wisdom of generations. They also warned that overly powerful central governments could become dangerous and therefore should be limited by traditions, laws, and local institutions. Although conservatism is often associated with resistance to change, it is not inherently anti-democratic. Instead, conservatives maintain that democratic government should respect historical traditions, social customs, and established institutions. In practice, conservatives often prove to be effective reformers by supporting measured improvements while moderating or slowing the more radical proposals of revolutionary movements. Romanticism and conservatism were both powerful reactions to the ideas of the Enlightenment and the upheavals of the French Revolution, but they responded in very different ways. Romanticism rejected the Enlightenment's emphasis on reason, order, and scientific thinking, instead celebrating imagination, emotion, individual creativity, spirituality, and the cultural traditions of the Middle Ages. Romantics believed that human experience could not be fully understood through logic alone and looked to nature, religion, and the past for inspiration. Conservatism, by contrast, focused less on emotion and more on preserving social and political stability. Conservatives rejected the revolutionary destruction of traditional institutions and defended historical continuity, established authority, and gradual reform. While Romantics sought an emotional and spiritual alternative to Enlightenment rationalism, conservatives sought to protect society from the disorder and violence that could result from rapid political change. Together, these movements shaped much of the intellectual and political life of 19th century Europe. In the next video, we will turn to liberalism, which, despite its differences from conservatism, also grew out of the Enlightenment and the political legacy of the French Revolution.